Captain Elias Ward awoke to the sharp sting of cold metal against his wrists. The restraints dug into his skin, unyielding, and the dim, sterile light overhead made the chamber feel less like a prison and more like a dissecting room. His vision adjusted slowly, revealing walls that shimmered faintly with a slick, chitinous sheen. This was no human vessel. The air carried a copper tang that clung to his throat, every breath reminding him he was in the hands of the enemy. The Kryth Dominion. Elias closed his eyes briefly, steadying his pulse. The last he remembered, his ship, the frigate Resolute, had been ambushed at the edge of the Aelios Belt. A fleet of Kryth warships descended with predatory precision, their weapons tearing through human hull plating as if it were paper. His crew had fought valiantly, but resistance had been futile. The image of fire swallowing his bridge officers replayed behind his eyelids, a torment as real as the cuffs biting into him now. Boot steps echoed, sharp and insectile, clicking against the floor. Elias lifted his head. A towering figure entered the chamber, its silhouette unmistakably Kryth. The alien's exoskeleton gleamed obsidian, its multiple limbs folded neatly like a mantis considering its prey. The being's mandibles flexed, and when it spoke, the sound was a rasp layered with unsettling clarity from a translator implant. "Human captain," the voice droned, deliberate and measured. "You are resilient. We expected you to expire with your vessel. Yet here you remain. That pleases me." Elias said nothing, studying the figure's posture, the subtle pride in its stance. This must be a commander. The Kryth hierarchy was strict, and only an overseer would trouble himself with interrogation. The creature stepped closer. "I am Overseer Vrykul. Your species calls itself unyielding. We have heard your kind dies before surrender. Today, I test that claim." Elias forced a smirk, though his jaw ached with tension. "If you're hoping for secrets, you'll find me a poor conversationalist." The alien's mandibles clicked in something resembling amusement. "We do not care for your military coordinates. Your fleets will fall regardless. What we desire is understanding. We wish to see how a human fractures." Two heavy doors hissed open behind Vrykul. Guards ushered in figures that made Elias's chest constrict. Two young women, their arms bound, stumbled forward under the shove of chitin-plated claws. Their hair was matted, their eyes wide with terror, but it wasn't their condition that shook him, it was their resemblance. Both had the same pale grey eyes as his youngest sister, a sister who had perished when Kryth bombardments leveled the colony on Demoris Prime. Their faces, though not identical, carried echoes of a family resemblance he knew too well. A cruel imitation. His throat tightened, and for a moment he could not breathe. Vrykul gestured lazily with one claw. "Here are your sisters. 2 precious lives bound to your bloodline. Only one may walk away. You will choose." Elias's voice cracked into a harsh bark of laughter. "You think this will break me? My sisters are dead. You butchered them years ago." "Perhaps," Vrykul said, tilting his insectile head. "But these are yours now. We designed them from your own genetic records. They are human. They are alive. And they plead for you." The women's eyes darted to Elias. One whispered, "Please, don't let me die." The other, trembling yet defiant, bit her lip until blood welled. "Choose her. Let me go." The room contracted around him, the air thick with their voices. He wanted to shout, to demand answers, but his training held him still. Rage without clarity was suicide. He focused on Vrykul. "You expect me to play executioner for your amusement," Elias said, his voice low, controlled. "Not amusement," Vrykul corrected, mandibles twitching. "Research. We are thorough. To conquer, one must dismantle. Your species resists domination with passion, with loyalty. If we sever that bond, we sever your strength. And so we ask, which loyalty defines you? Mercy, or pragmatism? Choose." Elias fought the urge to glance at the women again. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, a puzzle designed not for resolution but for torment. Yet the tear-streaked cheeks and quivering voices cut through his resolve. They looked real. They sounded real. The ache in his chest whispered of memories long buried, his sister's laughter before war had devoured their futures. He shut his eyes for a moment, hearing the echoes of screams from Demoris Prime. He had promised himself never to bow, never to falter in the face of Kryth cruelty. But here, confronted with two fragile lives, the promise tasted hollow. Vrykul leaned in, his mandibles inches from Elias's face. Hesitate too long, and both will die. Choose swiftly. We are recording every beat of your heart. The guards pressed the women closer. One began to sob uncontrollably, the sound tearing at Elias's composure. The other lifted her chin with a bravery that twisted his gut. He could not look at them both at once, his eyes flicked between them, and with every second, the weight of choice pressed heavier against his ribs. This was not strategy. This was cruelty sculpted into a blade. Elias clenched his fists until his nails dug into his palms. He would not give Vrykul the satisfaction of watching him unravel. But he also could not pretend indifference. His silence stretched, and the overseer's mandibles clacked with anticipation. Decide, Captain Ward, Vrykul hissed. Your humanity lies on the scales. Show us whether it endures or fractures. The women cried out together, one desperate, the other resolute. Their voices collided, filling the chamber with unbearable human sound. Elias's heart hammered against his chest, torn between rage and despair, logic and grief. And then he understood, there was no right choice, no mercy hidden in compliance. Whatever he chose, the Kryth would feast on the result. This was a theater of cruelty, and he was the actor forced into its final act. His jaw tightened, and he lifted his eyes to meet Vrykul's cold, gleaming stare. The overseer loomed, certain he had ensnared the human captain in an impossible snare. Elias inhaled slowly, burning the moment into memory. He would play along, for now. But inside, he vowed that before this was over, the Kryth would learn a truth more terrible than any data their experiments could yield. The chamber fell silent, everyone waiting for his answer. Elias exhaled through his teeth, masking the fury coiled like a blade in his chest, and whispered just loudly enough for them all to hear. Then let's begin. The chamber's silence pressed against Elias's skull, every breath a reminder of the two women trembling only a few feet away. Overseer Vrykul's glossy mandibles twitched in anticipation, and the guard's insectile eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. The ultimatum hovered like a blade suspended above his head. Choose one sister, human. The other dies. Elias kept his gaze steady, though his stomach churned. He thought of the real sisters he had lost, Anya and Marin, both burned away in the fires of Demoris Prime. The memories came unbidden, the smell of smoke, the sight of buildings collapsing under bombardment, the sound of his sister's laughter silenced in a single day. He clenched his fists so tightly that the restraints bit into his skin. These women before him were not them. They couldn't be. But the resemblance gnawed at his resolve. One of them, the timid one, collapsed to her knees, tears streaking her face. Please, she sobbed, I don't want to die. Don't let them kill me. Her voice trembled like glass on the verge of shattering. The other, still standing though her frame shook, locked her grey eyes on Elias. Choose me, she said, the words iron despite the quiver of her lips. Let me be the one. The clash of their pleas carved into his chest. It wasn't simply the question of who would live, it was the question of what kind of man he was when stripped to the core. Vrykul wanted to peel him open and examine the contents of his soul, as though humanity were nothing more than a specimen to catalogue. Elias refused to give him that satisfaction, but he could not ignore the urgency in the women's voices. He forced himself to address Vrykul directly. You think this proves anything? All it shows is your cowardice. You hide behind impossible choices. The alien's head tilted, mandibles scraping against each other in a rhythm that might have been amusement. On the contrary, Captain Ward. This proves everything. To break your species, we must know the seam that splits your courage from your weakness. In this chamber, you are humanity distilled. Every hesitation, every tremor of your pulse, adds to our understanding. Elias's jaw ached from clenching. His mind raced as though calculating a battle plan. Was this truly about choice, or about spectacle? He remembered interrogation manuals, the lessons about pressure and psychology. This was no mere punishment, it was data collection. They wanted to see what he valued most: compassion, pragmatism, or rebellion. He turned to the women. "Tell me your names," he said, his voice cutting through their sobs. The timid one stammered, "I'm Lyra." The defiant one's chin lifted. "Kara." 2 simple syllables each, delivered with shaky conviction. Elias studied their faces, searching for cracks, for inconsistencies that would expose the truth of their creation. Were they clones? Hybrids? Some grotesque fabrication designed to mimic humanity? Yet when Lyra's shoulders shook with another sob, he felt the same instinct he had always carried in battle: the urge to protect. Vrykul watched with predatory stillness. Hesitation is choice. Every moment you stall tilts the scales toward their mutual death. Is that your answer, human? Shall both perish because you lack resolve? Elias shut his eyes for a moment, steadying himself against the weight of the trap. His training whispered strategies: delay, misdirect, uncover the enemy's weakness. Yet time stretched thin, and the sound of Lyra's sobs grew unbearable. When he opened his eyes, he felt older, carved hollow by the decision that loomed. He turned to Kara, the defiant one. Her gaze did not waver. She had already chosen herself as the sacrifice, sparing him the burden of deciding. It was her strength that cut deepest, her refusal to cling to life that mirrored his own defiance in the face of the KOITH. "I choose her," Elias said, nodding toward Kara. His voice cracked only slightly. "She lives." The words hung in the air like a death knell. Lyra gasped, terror freezing her body. The guards moved with efficient brutality, seizing her arms as she screamed. Elias strained against his restraints, rage boiling through him. He wanted to throw himself forward, to tear the guards apart with his bare hands, but he was pinned by iron and circumstance. Vrykul raised one limb in a subtle command. A blade, curved and glistening with alien venom, slid from the guard's wrist. Lyra's cry echoed off the walls, sharp and piercing, before the blade struck and silence swallowed the chamber whole. Elias turned his head away, but the sound of it, the final gurgle of a life extinguished, lodged itself inside him like shrapnel. Kara's lips trembled, but she did not weep. Instead, she stared at Elias with something that might have been gratitude, or perhaps accusation. He could not tell. Vrykul leaned close, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. "So it is done. Your mercy favors the strong-willed, not the weak. Fascinating. You have revealed much." Elias wanted to spit in the overseer's face, to lash out with the fury that roared inside him, but he forced himself to remain still. Every fiber of his being screamed that he had failed not only Lyra but humanity itself. He had given the KOITH what they wanted: data. Proof that even the most decorated of human captains could be cornered, manipulated, and broken into complicity. Kara sank slowly to the floor, her eyes fixed on Elias. "You saved me," she whispered, the words hollow. "No," Elias muttered, his voice low, choked. "I condemned you both." The overseer straightened, towering above him with the calm of a predator satisfied with its meal. "This record will be most instructive for our strategists. Your kind prides itself on unbreakable loyalty. Yet here lies the truth. Given pressure, even a captain of your vaunted fleets will choose one bond over another. Humanity fractures. Humanity bleeds." Elias met Vrykul's gleaming eyes and spoke with the last shred of fire left to him. "You think this makes us weak? All you've proven is that you'll never understand what it means to be human." The alien gave no answer, only a hiss that reverberated through the chamber as he turned to leave. The guards followed, dragging Lyra's body with them. The stench of blood and venom lingered like smoke. Left in the silence, Elias sagged against his restraints. His heart pounded a rhythm of guilt and fury. Kara shifted closer, her chains rattling softly, and for a brief moment, he allowed himself to meet her eyes. She did not weep. She did not speak. Her stare was steady, as though waiting for something more from him: an explanation, a promise, a plan. Elias exhaled slowly. His choice had been forced, twisted into cruelty, but it was not the end. He would not let it be the end. Beneath the weight of his guilt, a spark flared, small yet unyielding. The KOH believed they had broken him. They believed they had reduced humanity to data on a slate. But Elias Ward knew this wasn't over. His mind, even amidst the wreckage of choice, began shaping something else, a path forward, a counterstroke. He shifted his gaze back to Kara, his voice rough but steady. "We're not done." The chamber smelled of iron and venom long after Lyra's body was taken away. Elias sat bound in silence, his head bowed, guilt pressing into his chest like a physical weight. Kara leaned against the opposite wall, her breathing shallow, her grey eyes unwavering. The chains that bound her wrists gleamed faintly in the sterile light, but she seemed almost unaffected by them. No tears, no tremors, only an unsettling composure that gnawed at Elias the longer he studied her. He forced himself to look away. The KOITH had won this round. He had played their game, and Lyra had paid for it with her life. His own words, "she lives," still echoed in his head like a verdict. He tried to justify it to himself. Kara had volunteered. Kara had shown strength. But the truth refused to soften. He had still chosen. He had still obeyed. The sound of metal grinding jarred him from his thoughts. A panel in the wall slid open, revealing Vrykul. The overseer's elongated form entered with deliberate calm, the gleam of his obsidian carapace reflecting the light. His mandibles flexed as he regarded the two prisoners. "Our records confirm it," Vrykul rasped. Faced with impossible choice, the human leans toward preserving resilience. "This will inform our strategies. Entire populations will fracture the way you did, Captain Ward." Elias forced his voice steady. "You've proved nothing. You killed her, not me." The overseer's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement. "Ah, but your decision set the knife in motion. Your guilt betrays you. You humans are curious, you grieve for what you kill, yet you cannot live without killing. A contradiction we will exploit." Elias held his glare, though his stomach churned. "Keep collecting your data. You'll never understand us." Vrykul tilted his head, as though considering the words, then turned his gaze to Kara. "And you, survivor. How does it feel to be chosen?" Kara's reply was flat, devoid of triumph. "Like a punishment." The overseer lingered on her, mandibles twitching in faint interest. "Strong, yet detached. Perhaps we should keep you alive longer than planned." With that, he retreated into the shadows, the door sealing behind him. Silence returned, broken only by the faint hum of alien machinery. Elias leaned back, his wrists aching in the restraints. Kara shifted closer, the chains dragging along the floor. She studied him with a strange intensity that made him uneasy. "You knew what they were doing," she said. "You saw it. The trap. The test." Elias nodded grimly. "And I still played along." Her voice dropped, quieter, measured. "You didn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice," Elias snapped, more harshly than he intended. Then, softer, "it's the only thing they can't take from us." Kara's gaze sharpened. "Then choose now. Don't let this be where it ends." There was something in her tone that unsettled him, something too deliberate. He narrowed his eyes. "You don't sound like someone who just watched her sister die." Kara didn't flinch. "Because she wasn't my sister." The words cut through him like ice. Elias studied her face, calm, almost mechanical, and realization began to form. The steadiness, the lack of grief, the uncanny resemblance to his own dead family. This wasn't coincidence. "You're not real," he said slowly, his voice heavy with dawning certainty. "You're not who you look like." Kara met his stare without blinking. "I'm real enough. Flesh, blood, bone. But not entirely human." The room seemed to tilt as her words sank in. The KOH hadn't merely cloned faces from his genetic record, they had engineered something else, something hybrid. Kara's strength, her eerie composure, her survival, it all made sense now. Elias's gut twisted with rage. "They made you to test me. To test us." Kara lowered her head slightly. "Yes. I'm their creation. But I'm still alive. And so are you. That means we can turn this." The words snapped him back into focus. Rage gave way to calculation. The KOITH had chained him, humiliated him, forced him to choose, but they had also underestimated him. He had been trained for the impossible: starship ambushes, zero-gravity combat, survival under siege. This chamber was just another battlefield. He closed his eyes briefly, mapping the room. The guards were gone. The restraints were alien but mechanical, designed for control, not comfort. The seams pressed against his wrists in a rhythm he could feel. With enough torque. Elias twisted sharply. Pain shot through his arm, but the cuff groaned. Again, harder. A crack echoed, and suddenly his right wrist was free. The shock of release shot through him like adrenaline. He moved quickly, before doubt could settle, prying open the other restraint with brute force until his hands were free. Kara watched with unblinking calm, her lips curving in the faintest shadow of a smile. "You see. You're not broken." "Not yet," Elias muttered, already scanning for a weapon. He spotted it by the door. One of the guards had left behind a blade, its alien metal glistening faintly under the light. He crossed the chamber in 3 swift strides, snatched it up, and turned to Kara. Her chains rattled as she raised her wrists. "Cut me free." He hesitated, blade poised. She was part of the KOH's experiment, built to manipulate him, possibly even designed to betray him. But leaving her behind meant walking into the alien corridors alone. And something in her eyes, steady, unflinching, spoke not of betrayal but of purpose. With a swift slash, the chains fell. Kara rubbed her wrists briefly, then stood, her posture unnervingly controlled. "We need to move quickly. They'll come back." Elias nodded. The door hissed open under his hand, and together they slipped into the corridor. The ship pulsed with alien light, organic and mechanical fused in grotesque harmony. Shadows of patrolling guards loomed ahead. Elias pressed Kara against the wall, waiting until the patrol passed, then moved with the precision of a predator. They advanced deeper, past chambers that hummed with restrained energy. Elias's instincts sharpened when he noticed the markings etched along the walls, rows of alien script glowing faintly. He brushed his hand against one, and the surface shifted, revealing a glimpse of data streams within. He realized with a chill what they were: records. Thousands of files, each labeled with coordinates, dates, species. The KOITH had been conducting these choices across countless human colonies. Testing, recording, analyzing. He saw flashes of humans screaming, kneeling, choosing an archive of humanity's torment. "They've been doing this everywhere," Elias whispered, fury boiling up. "Breaking us down piece by piece." Kara's eyes flicked to the glowing data. "Then we know what we have to do. Destroy it." The weight of her words settled over him like steel. This was no longer about his guilt, or even Lyra's death. This was about the war itself. The KOH weren't simply conquering, they were dissecting humanity's spirit, turning every act of loyalty and defiance into ammunition. If he allowed this archive to survive, the enemy would wield it against every soldier, every civilian, every last remnant of his people. He turned toward Kara, the blade still warm in his grip. "You said we're not done." "You're right. We end this here." For the first time, she allowed herself a flicker of expression, not sorrow, not triumph, but something fiercer. Determination. They moved deeper into the ship, every step a quiet vow. Elias's choice had damned one life, but now he carried the weight of thousands. The KOITH thought they had cracked humanity. They were wrong. He tightened his grip on the blade, eyes fixed on the glowing path ahead. The overseer would see soon enough what choice truly meant. The corridors of the KOITH vessel thrummed with a pulse that felt alive, as though the entire ship were a colossal organism. Elias moved swiftly, the alien blade clenched tightly in his hand, Kara at his side. Every step forward carried the weight of a decision already made. He would not leave this ship without crippling the Dominion's experiment. He had chosen once under their gaze, and that choice had damned him. This time, he would decide on his own terms. Patrolling guards clattered in the distance, their limbs clicking against the chitinous floor. Elias pressed himself against the curved wall, motioning for Kara to follow. Her movements were unnervingly precise, her breathing steady despite the danger. She was unlike any human he had ever fought beside, calm as steel forged in alien fire. Yet in that calm, he saw purpose, and it sharpened his own. They advanced deeper until the corridor opened into a chamber vast enough to swallow entire starships. Bioluminescent nodes pulsed across the walls like constellations, each connected to spires of organic machinery. At the chamber's heart rose a monolithic structure, its surface alive with streams of alien script. Elias recognized it instantly: the data core, the archive of every cruel experiment the KRYTH had run on his people. He felt his jaw tighten. Each glowing strand represented a life reduced to a number, a scream catalogued for analysis. He imagined colonies crumbling not only under bombardment but under the crushing weight of despair, carefully engineered by the Dominion. Rage coiled hot in his chest. Kara's voice cut through his thoughts, quiet but resolute. That's the heart. Destroy it, and their research dies with it. Before he could answer, the chamber doors split open behind them. Overseer Vrykel entered, flanked by a phalanx of guards. His obsidian frame caught the chamber's glow, mandibles flexing in satisfaction. You were always going to come here, the overseer hissed. Humans cannot resist striking at symbols. Predictable. Even now, you are but another datum in our study. Elias raised the blade, his shoulders square. You've studied us all you want. Now I'll teach you something you can't record. Vrykel spread his limbs wide, a gesture both theatrical and menacing. And what lesson is that? That you'll never own our choices, Elias snarled. The first wave of guards surged forward, weapons raised. Elias met them head-on, his blade flashing silver in the chamber's glow. He ducked under a slicing limb, driving the weapon upward through a KRYTH's thorax, ripping it free in a spray of ichor. Kara moved beside him, unnervingly swift, striking with alien efficiency. Though unarmed, she used her chains like weapons, wrapping them around a guard's limbs and snapping joints with terrifying precision. The fight raged in a flurry of chitin and steel. Elias moved with the practiced brutality of a soldier who had seen too many battles lost but never stopped fighting. He drove another guard back into a wall, severing its limb before plunging the blade into its chest. His muscles burned, but adrenaline carried him forward. When the last of the guards fell, Vrykel advanced alone. He loomed taller than any Elias had faced, his mandibles glistening, his limbs tipped with serrated edges. The overseer's voice dripped with venom. You think a single act of defiance matters? We have dissected your spirit. We have already won. Elias tightened his grip, stepping between Vrykel and the data core. Then why are you still afraid of me? The overseer struck first, his limbs slashing with lightning speed. Elias parried, the alien blade clanging against chitin, sparks scattering. The force of each blow rattled his bones, but he refused to yield. Kara circled wide, her eyes locked on the core, but Vrykel's focus never strayed from Elias. This was the moment the overseer had craved, the final fracture of a human captain. Pain seared across Elias's arm as a serrated edge tore his flesh, but he pressed forward, teeth gritted. He ducked under another strike, driving his blade into Vrykel's abdomen. The overseer shrieked, a sound like grinding metal, and lashed out, hurling Elias across the chamber. He slammed against the floor, vision flashing white, but forced himself back onto his feet. Kara's voice rang out. Elias. She pointed toward the core. It's vulnerable at the base. Vrykel wheeled toward her, fury dripping from every movement. Elias saw the overseer raise his limbs to strike her down. In that instant, a choice presented itself again: save her, or seize the chance to destroy the core. It mirrored the cruelty of the first trial, but this time Elias refused the framework. He sprinted forward, not toward Kara, not toward Vrykel, but directly for the glowing base of the core. His blade plunged deep, severing conduits that pulsed with alien light. Sparks cascaded in a shower of fire as the entire chamber shook. Vrykel screamed, his limbs flailing wildly. No. You cannot. But it was too late. The streams of alien script fractured, dissolving into static. The archive, decades of cruelty, vanished into nothingness. The overseer's shriek became a roar of rage. He lunged at Elias, but Kara intercepted, her chains wrapping around Vrykel's limbs. With a strength that belied her frame, she pulled him off balance, giving Elias the opening he needed. He drove the blade upward, straight through the overseer's thorax. The cry that followed was deafening, shaking the chamber before collapsing into silence. Vrikel's body slumped, ichor pooling across the floor. The data core's collapse spread like wildfire, the bioluminescent nodes across the walls flickering out one by one. Alarms screamed in alien tones, and the chamber began to tremble violently. Kara staggered toward Elias, her chest heaving. The ship's destabilizing. We have to move. But Elias shook his head, his body trembling from blood loss and exhaustion. No. If we run, they'll rebuild. We have to finish this. She studied him for a moment, then nodded. Together they moved to the central console, Elias jamming the alien blade into the controls. Sparks erupted, systems overloading. He dragged in a ragged breath and activated the command sequence he had glimpsed on the panels, self-destruct. The entire ship groaned like a dying beast. Kara's voice softened, almost human now. You'll die with them. Elias looked at her, his face streaked with sweat and blood. Maybe. But if humanity has to choose between survival and freedom, we'll always choose freedom. The chamber shook violently as systems overloaded. Elias staggered to the nearest console, slamming his palm against the communicator. His voice, raw yet unyielding, echoed through every channel the ship could broadcast. This is Captain Elias Ward of the Human Resistance. To every world that still breathes free air, remember this. The KRYTH cannot break us. They cannot own us. We choose our fate. The message carried into the void even as the chamber erupted in light. Kara's face was the last thing he saw, calm, steady, almost proud. Then the explosion consumed everything. Far away, in the cold reaches of space, fragments of the KRYTH vessel scattered like dying embers. Among the survivors who intercepted Elias's broadcast, the legend of the captain who refused to let the Dominion define humanity began to take root. The overseer had sought to measure the fracture of the human spirit. Instead, he had forged a story of defiance that no data could contain. And though Elias's fate remained uncertain, his choice, his true choice, endured, burning brighter than any archive.